Ladies and gentlemen, it's 11 o'clock. So welcome to this next session where we have two presentations, and we will do as we have done the other sessions that worked very well, so that we will have two presentations and then the discussion afterwards. So it's my huge pleasure to welcome Smiljana Narančić Kovač, our wonderful host for this very, very finely organized conference. Floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming. I'll share my thoughts and insights into the ontological status of reality narrative picture books. Doesn't work. No?
Everything has to start with an oopsie.
Yeah.
It's okay. We'll get the hang of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Yes.
Okay. So, yes. In particular, my goal is to describe the shift of the ontological status of real-world entities depicted in narrative picture books and to understand the influence on the ontological status of the story worlds themselves. I also hope to propose a simple typology of visual strategies used to represent specific entities. I discovered two groups of entities related to the real world, those belonging to it and those belonging to the fictional world. There are several categories of people and objects, and I'll show examples of most of them. So I will just go on as they will be repeated in the process. So the fictional entities function as those in the real world, but do not have a referent there. These do. So these examples show real people presented by photographs or imitations of photographs. In this case, their role is to specify the wider cultural and historical context of this particular story. Here, the protagonist is a blend of a traditional folktale hero and the real author, and the creator of the very picture book he appears in. It is composed of real and fictional components. But we can also see that Joseph's studio resembles the author's real space. These examples show how close real and fictional can be. This is another example of using a real place as the setting. This is the building of the Museum of Slavonia here in Osijek. And you can see it's in the picture book of Marianne. Most examples are blends of different categories, and so are these. These are real people in imitations of a poster and of two photographs. These are not direct representations, but people can be easily recognized. Che Guevara, Chaplin, and John Wayne. The next category is newspapers and magazines. We can see imitations of real newspapers in this and following examples. So you can see the name of the newspaper down there. Morgen Freiheit, which is an actual newspaper. Mother drops a fictional issue of the Saturday Evening Post from the 1950s. This sets the story in the past, together with other details in the image. The social status and concerns of this character are revealed by his selection of newspapers. He's looking for work, and the scream underlines his emotional state. We could already see imitations of photographs introducing real people, and in this case, they help create the cultural context of the story. These are only two of many. in this picture book. Now, photography in these examples, photos of New York are used throughout this picture book. In effect, the story is firmly on the borderline between fiction and reality. It can even change the ontological status of the narrative. Perhaps it is nonfiction, and we know it's based on autobiographical elements. But the fictional side is also emphasized. The photographs are carefully selected to support the plot. On the wall of an actual laundromat, there is a meaningful notice. And the main event of the story is that the girl's toy got lost there, which they're not responsible for, of course. So I think this is good time to introduce some theory. Many theoreticians underline that photography is a proof that something existed. It has the power to recall reality. Bart also explains the paradox of photographic meanings, particular, as he says, that it is an illogical conjunction between the here now and there then. So he develops this idea further just to get basic information about it. Yet photography is a tool a narrator can use to tell a story. As such, photos are carefully selected to carry narrative information. And the notice in the laundromat is a good example of this, I think. The situation is similar when we turn to newspapers. Content shared by newspapers is expected to be non-fictional and truthful. Because of that, photographs and newspapers in visual discourses of fictional picture books lead to an interplay of real and fictional. They render picture books metafictional. This slide shows how a depiction of a real product indicates the setting and makes the story more convincing. Another example. I found the real world referent of the sack of flour, but I couldn't find woody salt with or without this indicative star. But I found what is vodka. It seems the tin of salt is, after all, fictional, invented product with clear historical connotations. We can see how far the creativeness of picture book authors can go, right? Sometimes characters from real fictional narratives appear in fictional world. So these are actual fictional entities. We can see Superman, the tram, the Mad Tea Party, we've already seen, and other characters from Alice books, and they're sharing tea with Willie. Now, what happens here is two worlds come closer when they share such cultural icons, our and fictional world. But we are not sure about the ontological status of these characters within the fictional. Because are they depicted characters on the same narrative level as the story world of the protagonists or not? They could be either. So you can see Mary Poppins here just because I couldn't resist. And also Felix the cat and the cat in the hat. So just to show there are many examples like this. The pointing made by examples of represented or imitated sculptures are not rare either. And the thinker is imitated here. And the Pointing Man by Giacometti is an exhibit at MoMA in New York, as well as Magritte's and Dali's paintings. Olivia de Lopez also visits an exhibition and considers art. Here, in Whistler's Mother, the painting is transformed to follow the leitmotif of this story, gorilla. In this case, a painting is used to indicate the emptiness when mom leaves the family. Piggy book, yeah. I've always put picture books and artifacts. Well, depicted real objects are very frequently books. In this case, the text reveals that mom is reading a popular creation novel. It is the beginning of the novel that we can read from this image. Now, Willems depicted 2 real books on these pages, his own picture book, Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus, and an item of popular fiction for girls, and he recognized them by their covers. Picture books often represent themselves. These are 2 examples from 100 years apart, right? In this picture book, a girl and a boy read the same book. This is the moment when they see each other on its pages. Their roles of characters and readers blend, and they belong to 2 worlds at the same time. Those inside and outside the book. Again, the borderline. So this picture book abounds in all kinds of real objects which set the story in the 1970s. I'm sure that many of you can recognize some of these things, and I haven't labeled the pictures on all the pictures on the wall, just, you know, to. Okay, let us turn to fictional entities. Now, for example, newspapers. Even without titles, they raise the level of reality of the fictional world and make it more convincing. In these examples, newspapers represent the distance and separation of family members. The images in them underline elements of plot. In the first example, to the left, we can see King Kong and other gorillas. And in the second, many shouting faces. It seems they also call mom to serve breakfast like her sons. These newspapers have appropriate titles. The Badger reads Badger News, and the Postman Mirror Mirror, which brings news about Cinderella's honeymoon, which is part of the picture book. This issue of the newspaper is in line with the plot. Food falls instead of rain, and the paper reports about this disaster. The depiction adds elements of reality to the fictional and fantastic story world and makes it larger and complex. It also helps us interpret the story. So these are the titles in the newspaper and the name of the very appropriate name of the newspaper. But it is different here. We can see people playing with newspapers, and careful inspection reveals an article titled Cow's Escape. So it refers to an event in this picture book. However, it adds confusion because the sequence of events is not logical. But the article appeared before the event happened in the picture book. Somehow, the attraction of this picture book actually lies exactly in such puzzles. The wolf wants to justify himself for being falsely accused. The newspaper is offered as proof implicitly because we expect truthful reporting from newspapers, right? This doesn't happen. We see it is just a patchwork of meaningless fragments, which are obviously not true put together. Newspapers may also lie. In this case, a monster appears in the story. This is Narančić again, right? The fictional photographs document his reality within the fictional world. A story about a day at beach is expanded by fantastic elements, intruding into the realistic world. The photographs are all taken by the fictional Melville underwater camera. You can see it to the right. It says Melville on top, but I couldn't get the picture book to present it. The picture, sorry. And this camera floats in the sea. Children from around the world sometimes find it and develop photographs. Each takes a selfie with a photo of the previous child and send the camera further. So this photo to the left is almost realistic, but the other photographs show the underwater fantastic worlds. And they become almost believable because they're represented as photographs, believable within the fictional world, right? These are two examples of fictional advertisements. Just like many other quotations of similar objects, they turn the story world into a larger space which offers shops, products, and prices for advertised items which are not really part of the story. Sometimes creating art is done by a character. This leads to multiplication and sometimes mirroring of the narrative levels, and in consequence, of course, again, to metafiction. This is a case when the material of the book we are reading is used to create a new narrative level. Also, the borderline between reality and fiction is unclear because the book The Rabbit Reads looks exactly like our book. Finally, we encounter fictional real objects. We can see a letter in this envelope that can be opened, a library record slip, and a library membership card, which we can take out of the pocket, of a fictional library. This envelope in the famous Jolly Postman to the left, it contains a letter and a small picture book, which has an ISBN number and a story world of its own. To sum up, the main strategies seem to be simple. So what does it tell us about the ontological status of depicted real entities and fictional worlds? Such objects as newspapers, magazines, and photographs, fictional or artistic pieces, real paintings and books produce metafiction and function as intertexts, but their specific meanings and roles within a particular story world may differ. Fictional objects, which only exist in fiction, keep the same function in the fictional world, as I've already mentioned, as the equivalents in the real. They imply that the story world is better structured, more complex, and wider than the part which is shown. This makes the story world more credible. Ontological status. So depicted real entities become fictional, but remain connected with the real world. The fictional world becomes multi-layered because it contains real entities. The ontological status of fictional story worlds with such entities is not pure. It gets closer to reality. It meets the real world in metafiction. Thank you for your attention.